So today we're going to be demonstrating OpenShift multi-tenant environment with the container connector and F5 big IPs. I have a couple of applications running in different namespaces. This provides the network isolation inside of OpenShift. One is called Guestbook, the other one is called Yelp. There's a couple of prerequisites that we need to do. I have two selves pre-configured, one for internal ingress, external ingress, and one for communication with the OpenShift environment. There's no virtuals. We also are required to create a partition. I created the K8S partition. So the first thing we need to do is we need to set up a VXLAN profile and tunnel that we'll use to connect to the overlay network. So I'll create one called OSE Prof. We need to change a couple of the custom settings and set it to multi-point. There are no SDN controllers in the OpenShift environment, so we will be communicating with all the VTEPs directly. So the next part is to actually go ahead and set up the VXLAN tunnel that we're going to be using. We'll select the profile that we just created. We will use our internal self IP address as our VTEP address, the 192.168.11.22. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get an IP address from our OpenShift environment that we can use as part of our overlay network. So OpenShift uses host subnets. They assign a /23 to each node in the network. This is all part of a supernet that's a /14. So here we're taking a quick look at the YAML file. We see we're asking OpenShift to assign us an IP or a subnet, and then the fixed VNID host field is used for the multi-tenant environment to indicate that all ingress and egress VXLAN traffic will be using VNI 0. So we've created the host subnet. You see we have an IP space of 10.128.6.0. So we'll go ahead and set up the self IP address. And as I mentioned, the /23 is a superset of or a subset of a larger /14. So when I set up myself, you see I do it with a /14. I assign it to the VXLAN tunnel that was created. At this point, we've taken care of the prerequisites on the big IP. The next thing we need to do is instantiate our container connector. Because we're running in a multi-tenant environment, I will be installing the container connector and the cube system namespace. You see here the YAML file that we use. We're pulling the latest version. We are specifying the management plane information for the big IP, as well as what VXLAN that we're going to use. So we go ahead and instantiate the creation of the container connector. We'll do a quick watch and see when our container connector, so our container connector has already been created. So the next thing we'll do is we'll just check the logs of the newly instantiated container connector. So we just see the basic logging information. If we take a look at the cube system namespace, we see our container connector has been installed there. So the next thing is we're going to start off with our guestbook application. Here, and you see it's a multi-tiered application. We will set up a config file or a YAML file to instantiate that. I've pre-built it. We'll take a quick look at it. So there's a couple of key areas. We leverage the services label for the container connector to identify what machines we want to add to a pool. We also define the IP address that's going to be used by the VIP, and we can provide some additional parameters like the load balancing algorithm. Here what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a describe on the service, and you see that it's using port 80 and the endpoints. So we'll go ahead and instantiate this. So if we go back to our big IP, and under virtual servers, we have to go back to our K8S partition. You see that we have a VIP created. We'll go ahead and test that application. And we see the application is operational. For the second application that we're going to instantiate, we're actually going to leverage one of the F5 IAPs. We're going to leverage the App Services IAP version 2.0.0.4. So if we take a look at the YAML file that we're going to be using there, you see at the top of the file, many of the parameters are the same. We identify the service that we're going to be monitoring, what port. You see here as part of the front end, we define the IAP that we want to use. And then there's an IAP variables template where we can put in all the name value pairs for all the parameters we'd like to instantiate as part of the IAP. As part of this, we are actually going to be pulling the certain key and generating an SSL certificate for this application. So we're going to be doing SSL offloading. So we've instantiated the Yelp application. We'll take a look at the logs. You see that it's now written two virtual server configurations. If we go back and take a look at our big IP, we see that we have three VIPs, two for application, and one is an HTTPS redirect or an HTTP redirect to HTTPS. You see it was automatically associated with the appropriate I rule. We'll take a look at our pools. They both have one member in them. And what we're going to do now is we're going to scale up our applications. We're going to first start with the guest book. We're going to scale it to 20 pods. And we'll do the same thing with Yelp. So we're waiting for OpenShift to spin up those additional containers. And as the circle completes, it's instantiating those containers. If we go back and take a look, you see the guest book has already grown to 20 pool members. And you see both of our pools are now at 20 members. We'll go ahead and test the application. I've defined a DNS host name. You see the application launches and it is secure because I'm using a trusted certificate. If we take a look at some of the parameters, you see that we're defining protocol profiles, the SSL profile, persistence, one connect profiles.